Hi, this is Dr. Sean Marie Higgins with another episode of Spirit Call Out. This is where I bring messages from Spirit to their living and body loved ones. So for today, I'm going to do the call out first. But along with that, I'm going to share some insights as well as lessons and teachings that I received through communicating with His Spirit. Then I'm going to tell you a short story about how Spirit returned to me the importance of simple kindness. Even the smallest things that we think may not have an impact on other people or other people's lives, they really do. And not only that, but everything we do and say is felt or palpated or affects something on some other level of consciousness. There is something or someone always hearing every little thing we do and say. They're hearing and seeing it. Every little thing we do ripples out and is felt on some level, on some dimension. And I have a cute little story about that. But this particular call out, we're going to go right into it and start. It's an interesting call out from the morning of April 23rd, 2025 at about 5 a.m. Right upon waking, I was just starting to get out of bed and I could feel at least one, but maybe two spirits around me. So I stopped getting out of bed. I laid back down and said, okay, I'm ready. I did my opening technique, which I describe in a different episode, and I will describe it again. I promise you. I did my opening technique so that I could communicate with spirit. And then I did my connecting technique to connect with a specific spirit. And I'm so awake when this happens. I mean, I was literally almost standing up out of bed that I never expect to receive any messages. But as soon as I lay down and I start the process of getting into the opening state of consciousness, I always get information. It is instantaneous. So this morning, a young woman came to me and introduced herself as an image, as spirit oftentimes does. They will introduce themselves to me as an image that will portray visually some information as well as some sound sometimes, as well as movement, as in like a scenario going on. And then, of course, telepathic information. And then I will journal as much as I can about that. And then I will at a later time sit down, connect with that spirit deliberately and get more information. And I also draw the spirit because as I draw the spirit, I'm creating a bridge between my remembrance of their visual and my physical environment as pen and paper. And the conduit's my body. I'm the bridge, bringing information from the spiritual realm into the physical realm. So I saw the left profile silhouette of a woman's head and face. And here it is. She had a ponytail, which was obvious by the silhouette. Although I was not shown texture or detail, as you can see here by my drawing, it's obvious she has a ponytail. Now, I was pretty impressed with my ability to draw this almost exactly as I saw it. My first attempt was an amoeba. It looked like nothing human. But as I start to draw, I do one or two usually that are just ridiculously comical. And then as I continue, spirit then begins to become part of that as if they were communicating with me. In other words, they help me portray them in this world, just like they do by giving me information and having me translate it in human language. They will certainly see me trying to draw them from my remembering them in a spiritual realm and to bring them back into my world on a piece of paper to show other people. This is translation. This is visual translation, interdimensional translation. Talk about language translation. When they see me doing this, they lend a hand. And I don't physically feel them moving my hands, but somehow things just become easier to see and notice and feel. Like I can suddenly discern proportion better. My hand just seems to go where it needs to. In almost every episode, I've recommended if you have a dream that's very vivid and really moving for you, try to remember something in the dream and draw it. If you see a vision of something in a meditative state, draw it. If you are a medium and see spirits, draw them. This is such a good exercise in opening new doorways of consciousness, functioning, and awareness. Now, this woman seemed to be in her 20s or 30s, very mature for her age, Although I didn't see features, the silhouette indicates that she's young because she's got very good tone, at least by the silhouette. And also her energy telepathically transferred to me as being very young, but very mature for her age. So she was clear with what she wanted in her life. She was clear with her words, and she was always very clear with what she wanted out of life and with other people, which kind of is analogous to the way this silhouette came through as strikingly clear. It was pitch black on a white background or bright white on a black background. Now, I can't tell which one it was, and I know that sounds bizarre. I can't remember if it was black on white or white on black. And in the moment, as she was talking to me and moving her mouth and saying words that weren't audible, by the way, but I'll get to that in a second. As I was seeing this visual, I couldn't even tell if it was white on black or black on white. And I know that sounds bizarre, but I'm going to talk about that in a moment. But like I just said, she was moving her mouth as though she was talking, but it was silent. There was no sound. So I see a silhouette of a form, but there's no detail. I see clear, coordinated, articulate movement of lips. However, I hear no sound. I can't hear the words or understand the meaning of what she's saying because I can only see the outline of her lips moving in order to form words. But what the words are and what the sound of those was like, I don't know. She wanted me to notice that there was no sound. She wanted me to notice that her lips were moving very coordinated and articulate, while at the same time not allowing me to hear these very clearly articulated words that would usually be important to someone if they were clearly articulating something. They would really want to convey the meaning of those words. But she wanted to convey the meaning of articulate, clear, not the actual deeper meaning of the actual words she was saying. So there are a couple of points to talk about here, the silhouette and the silent words. And again, I said it might be difficult to understand from a logical point of view, but I can't remember, even at the time I was having the contact, if this was black on white or white on black. And that's why I drew this in gray. In the spirit world, color is different. Color isn't just a visual thing in the spiritual realm. I've never heard anyone say that before, but from my experience, color is not just a visual thing. Color is felt on an intuitive level, but it is also felt as a sort of blending and merging with the information, the intelligence that I'm receiving. In other words, the color and contrast is part of the language through which spirit is communicating. So my not being able to tell if it was black on white or white on black, even while I was looking right at it, is part of the meaning of what she was conveying to me. Now, when communicating with spirit, and this goes along with the merging of black on white, white on black, black on white, white on black. Which one is it? She wasn't showing me gray. She was showing me two combinations of stark contrast. It's either black on white or white on black. She was showing me two alternatives of stark contrast, but she wasn't actually blending them for me and showing me the gray. Now, this kind of made me feel in the moment, and that's why I'm going to tell you about it right now. It merged with my awareness of my own way of communicating with spirit. I first acknowledge myself as energy, but I'm still physical. So the result of a physical being perceiving itself as pure energy is the merging of the two. This creates a middle body, so to speak, which is what I call to describe this merged middle density body. Then that hybrid body, so to speak, and the spirit that I'm communicating with, we approach each other. We both decide to approach each other. Then our two bodies approximate, they touch, and then they overlap just a portion, creating an elliptical region where the spirit and I are simultaneously occupying the same space at the same time. Like when two circles on a piece of paper will overlap just a little bit partially, it creates an overlapped elliptical region. This region between the spirit and me is like a handshake or a holding of hands. A small portion of the energy bodies of me and the spirit are overlapping and holding hands. Of course, we don't have hands. I don't really have hands in a merged state, and the spirit definitely does not in pure energy form. So neither of us have hands. But we overlap to commune through the small parts of us that have merged. The elliptical space, the overlap, the hand holding, the information is exchanged in the overlap. Now, this is information I received directly from having my own experiences with spirit. This is not something that I say to be a true perception for everyone when they speak with spirit. So please know that this is not something I read or looked up or researched. This is my own authentic experience. So it's okay when you try some of the techniques that I talk to you about and you don't experience that exact perception. This is just my way of perceiving it. You may perceive it in a different way. So since I'm no longer in physical form, my sensory organs are no longer separated by physical tissue. Therefore, they all merge too and function as what I call, open quote, one sense, close quote. We can assume our physical body as we go through everyday life. But if we change our perspective, we can assume our body as energy composition. It's a matter of perception. It's a matter of shifting awareness. It's a very focused process of shifting awareness, very focused and deliberate. Once we shift our awareness to our self as energy, everything works on that level. All of our physical functions assume their energy function parallels, and this includes all physical body as well as mental functions that we use for communication, for both conveying communication and receiving and understanding and processing information that we're picking up and sensing. So, with regards to the color concept that I was talking about previously, we begin to perceive via telepathy that can merge with all of our functions, all of our sensory functions. So we begin to perceive color telepathically, which merges them with all of the other senses too. As energy forms, we can understand the meaning of color. We can hear color. We can smell color. All of our sensory organ functions begin to sense all stimuli. They're not separated anymore. Touch senses color. Taste senses sound, and every combination that exists that you can think of. Additionally, each sensory organ function begins to perceive and understand conceptually. They become intellectual and intuitive. So as I perceive information coming to me from spirit, I'm understanding it with one sense. And I'm going to call this sense immersion. Sensing this way feels like I am immersed within the communication, like I'm swimming and buoyant within it, because all of my sensory organ functions and perceptions have blended, and I'm in an ocean of things to sense, of a vibrational continuum of information within which I'm able to conceptually understand with all of my sensory organs blended, because they are no longer separated by physical tissue. So I can understand intellectual meaning with smell, touch, taste, sight, and hearing, and palpation. I can palpate the texture of color. I can palpate sound. I can palpate the intensity of light with touch. I feel as though I'm immersed and floating in that which I am trying to understand, instead of what happens in the physical world from my perspective, which is listening with my ears to someone standing outside of me. Instead of floating in the information, I'm standing outside of the information and trying to grasp it coming to me from an external source. So it's a within and without kind of thing. It's like an inside out way of sensing. But with that comes stark clarity. As we become more like spirit in form, which we are when we merge, when we open to get ready to talk to spirit, As we become more like spirit in form, we also become more like the form of the communication that we're conveying and the communication that we're understanding. Because communication is intention, telepathy, it's even human spoken word, sound. Compression waves in the physical atmosphere of sound are pure vibration. So we are becoming more like the information that we are giving and receiving. So we're becoming the communication. Therefore, color, sound, sight, taste, smell, intuition, telepathy, and even premonition ability, all of that is one sense. However, with all of that, and with the fact that we're becoming the communication, the clarity of what's being communicated is greater. There are no gaps in sensory reception because there's no more physical tissue separating them. There are no gaps created by physical tissue. Physical and energy forms parallel each other in our body. Where there is a gap created by material density, such as tissue, there is a gap in energy parallel form that is a potential blind spot for both understanding and clearly conveying information. And we feel this blind spot in the spiritual realms. That's why we merge our body with our energy form to erase the physical tissue separation. Really, everything we sense is vibration, some form of vibration. Our eyes in the physical world sense electromagnetic vibration and more, but that's one of the ways we describe light. Our ears pick up compression waves, so they pick up longitudinal compression as compression waves of sound in hertz. So they're different waveforms, but they're vibrations. So we can see how vibration is really what everything is. It's just a matter of how we perceive it. So even though I can't logically explain in words everything that comes through, I definitely notice everything that Spirit wants me to notice. And that's the clarity I'm talking about. One of the things I noticed in the moment was that I could not tell if it was black on white or white on black, the silhouette. Spirit wanted to show me that neither one must be identified all of the time. Sometimes what's more important is that which we cannot logically understand. Because once we attach logic to something, we stifle its meaning and its power. Spirit wanted me to understand a middle ground by showing me this contrast between black and white and black, in a way that made each one impossible to discern. Yet they didn't show me gray. They didn't show me the merge. They wanted me to draw that conclusion. They were giving me the two boundaries between which I was to merge in order to understand the meaning that was being conveyed. It was as if I saw the vision so quickly alternating between black on white and white on black, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It was alternating so fast, almost too fast for me to see that there was an alternating, but slow enough so that I could see that. So I could not tell which one it was. And by the way, I think I might have mentioned this, but I did not see color, only black and white. But what I could clearly understand was the concept of contrast. Both visuals, without a doubt, were very stark and clear with crisp edges and clear articulate motions of the lips and mouth as the spirit talked. So the visual silhouette was clear and the outlining of the lips of the words was very clear. Although she was talking, no sound was coming out of her mouth. In this way, you could also say that she gave me a silhouette of her speech, of what she was saying, a silhouette of the words, a silhouette of her meaning of words that she was voicing. Because I saw the form of her lips and mouth clearly articulating words, yet heard no words. I heard no specific word articulations, and I did not hear the vocal tone or texture or signature of her voice. So she was silhouetting her form, meaning her body and her features visually, and she was silhouetting her voice, her vocal features, and her words. The details of her articulated language are not only missing, but the fact that they were missing was shown to me to be significant. The absence of them is significant. And we know this wasn't an audio equipment failure of any kind. I mean, this is spirit communicating. So this was deliberate. It was another detail to which I was called attention to. It was done deliberately. And what makes this call out so interesting to me is that the detail that I was called to notice was that there was no detail. Yet upon sitting with the spirit, I gained the most insight. The obvious absence of detail of the face and the absence of the sound of her words created a greater thing to notice than if she had shouted her words. It created a greater thing to notice than if she had given very fine detail of her facial features. However, some of the things that she did make very significant, her silhouette was clearly shown to be very stark and striking. So it's the contrast. Her silhouette clearly showed that she was young. She was beautiful. She had a ponytail. She had a beautiful profile, and she highlighted her nose. It was just pretty perfect, actually. Like, this is the perfect profile. These details were pointed out. She says that the silhouette itself is somehow identifying to the loved ones she is trying to reach. In addition to all of these meanings that we just covered, it is also identifying to the loved ones she's trying to reach. It is either something they did together in some kind of art form, like drawing or playing around with shadow figures with a flashlight, or an art gallery showing, or some kind of conversation or issue. Right now, she's also saying to me as I'm doing this, as I'm recording it, she's saying, quote, more than words. She's also saying, keep it clear. Don't worry about the details. The details don't matter. The spaghetti of it all, which she's quoting a book, my chapter that I wrote about the spaghetti meaning like all the conundrum and details of dramatic life circumstances. The spaghetti of it, the specifics of circumstance no longer matter in the spirit world. So keep it simple. She is reaching loved ones to say all of that, but also most importantly that she's here. She's with you. She's saying hello. And oftentimes that's what spirit will do. They come through just to validate their presence, to comfort their living and body loved ones by letting them know they're still around, they're still here, and they're available for you to talk to at any moment. They are around you, they can hear you, and you're going to find that out when I tell you my little story at the end here. But if this is your call out, talk to her. I really recommend that. Sit and talk with this spirit. Even if you don't get an answer right away, as in a mediumship conversation, you will be returned with answers. Sometimes when we ask spirit information, it's because we're expecting an answer. And that expectation comes from our consciousness, from a physical perception of life. So it comes from a standpoint of living a physical life. But then we walk away, we start to do yard work, vacuum the floor, and come drive in the car. We completely forget we asked the question. Our consciousness suddenly opens and allows in the information from a spiritual standpoint. But sometimes when, like I said, when we're asking the questions, we're in a physical standpoint of perception. So we can't hold that place if we want to receive the information unless we go through an opening process where we merge. Some people are naturally even just born merged. And I have to work with some of my clients in order to help them turn off their spirit talking. They have to have closing hours. But for most of us, we have to work at it and learn how to open. So it's okay when you talk to your spirit. Let's say this call out is for you and you talk with her and you don't receive an answer in that moment that you're doing a meditation or a quiet contemplation time with her. Just know she heard you, and when you walk away and get involved in other things, your consciousness relaxes as you're no longer expecting anything, and your peripheral awareness starts to open up and gives you a broader spectrum of things to pick up. So just be patient with yourself. Other things I want to mention that went through my mind while I was communicating with her and while I was preparing for this recording, not things that she told me directly, but things that kind of came through my mind, is that since I saw her with no detail and I saw her talking, but I heard no words, possibly she could not see or hear anything at the time of her death. And that may also be an identifying factor. Possibly she felt unseen or unheard, or was unable to be noticed and heard. Perhaps she did not get the chance to say goodbye, or someone did not get to say goodbye to her before she passed, or they did not get to see or say something to her that they needed to see or say prior to her passing, which may be another reason why she said the spaghetti of it all is no longer even existent in the spiritual realm. So be simple, more than words. We are a part of that vibrational continuum. When we are at a lack of words, when our words are stifled or prevented because of distance, schedules, circumstance, physical disabilities, nothing can stifle our connection to the vibrational continuum with which we are a part. Nothing. So rest in that. Fall into the vibrational continuum and know that no matter what physical circumstances may present to you, you are never separated from the ones you love, even if they pass in physical form, before you feel finished with them. They're always available in spiritual form, still part of that same continuum. Okay, so I encourage you to sit quietly in contemplation or meditation if this is your spirit loved one. Now, we're all going to take a deep breath together, and I'm going to tell you the story of a funny thing that happened that proves to me there is a vibrational continuum, and that beings that I may not even know are hearing what I'm saying and doing, are either amused by it or are really touched by it, but somehow they were affected by it because it was returned to me. It was like the spiritual boomerang came back. Like what I did, my actions boomeranged back to me. I was in a convenience store one day and I was in a line, and in front of me was this woman at the counter buying lottery tickets, and she was buying the big megabucks, millions, winning millions of dollars kind of lottery ticket. And I was waiting in line patiently, and I saw her getting the tickets, and I didn't know her at all. I'd never seen her before. I didn't even know what she looked like because she was standing at the counter and I was behind her. And I just simply said, "I hope you win." And she turned around and looked at me and said, "Oh my God, thank you so much." And the lady at the register was like, "Oh, isn't that sweet? I do too. I hope you win." The guy behind me goes, "I hope you win. I do too." And then we all laughed. And I said, "Yeah, you can buy me dinner. Look me up. I'm sure we'll meet again if you come here often to the convenience store." So we had a laugh, and she was happy. I was happy, and I sent forth a good message and a good hope for someone. And then I told her, actually, I want you to say that to yourself and say, "I've won." And she goes, "I will, I will, I will." And she ran out the door, and the line continued, and I went home. Maybe that same week I was in line at the same convenience store again, and I was behind another person buying a lottery ticket. It was a woman. It was not the same woman. She was buying the big megabucks millions ticket as well, and a bunch of scratch tickets. And I was standing behind her, and I said, "I hope you win." And she turned around, she's like, "Oh my God, thank you. That is so nice. Aw, that's so sweet." And then the lady at the register, who was probably a different person, I don't even think it was the same woman. It might have been. I don't remember that detail. But she laughed, and, we exchanged words, and it caused everyone around to smile. So I went home, thinking, "Oh, wasn't that sweet? I hope she does win." And I drove home. Later on that week, I woke up first thing in the morning. At the time, I usually get spirit call-outs coming to me. And I was just getting out of bed, and I heard a very loud young male voice say, "I hope you win," just in the air. And he probably said it about 3 or 4 times before I really recognized he was saying it, because he wasn't approaching me to contact with me. He wasn't approaching me to communicate with me. That's a different thing. What he was doing was sending me a sentence. That's different contact. When spirit approaches for meaningful communication exchange is different than just saying a sentence that you want the physical person to hear. So I did not see him. I got an idea of what he might have looked like or his energy, but I heard him say, "I hope you win." And I'm so used to talking with spirit at that time that he probably had to say it 2 or 3 or 4 times before I actually was like, "Oh my God, spirit's talking to me." And I said, "I hope you win too." And I just felt my heart well up with happiness, and I smiled. And then I got up and had a cup of coffee. So with that, I hope you all win. And I hope to see you next time for Spirit Call Out. Wishing you all loving communion with all of your spirit friends. I hope you win. Namaste.